Hello everyone, my name is Aiman Akhtar. Thank you for joining today's ZBrush live stream. Give me a few minutes and I'll get set up. Turn on some tunes. Using the app Pretzel player. Bunch of royalty-free music. If it gets too loud at any point, let me know and I'll turn it down. Alright, so let's check the audio to make sure that you guys are hearing me. Let's check the audio. You can hit double audio for a second. Cool, that's working on Twitch. And ZBrush Live. Cool, that's working on Twitch. Sweet. Alright, so like I said, my name's Aiman. I'm on the Restream chat. So if any of you have any questions on Twitch, ZBrush Live, on Facebook, on YouTube, just drop your questions and I'll get to them as soon as I can. It's getting a bit loud already. Alright, so my name is Aiman Akhtar. I'm a 3D artist in LA for about 5 years, and before that, about a decade in Chicago, doing 3D for advertising, commercials, VFX, games, toys, animation. And for the past, 5 years or so, I've been doing a lot of 3D printing. Large-scale projects, small-scale projects, VR, costumes, my own toy line. So that's the basics. If you want to learn more, you can go to aiman3d.com. I've been presenting with Pixelogic bit now. You can go to pixelogic.com ZBrush Live Presenters and you can check out all my past broadcasts and schedule. I'm usually doing Thursdays around this time. See some more of my work. And all the previous streams. So there's 5 pages and I'm on stream number 43 now. So first thing I wanted to do is kind of go over a little bit from last week, and then we'll get started in this week's. All right, let me finish making the rest of my announcements. So my latest project is Fungusaurs. If you want to follow, that's instagram.com Fungusaurs. That's my wife and I building our own IP, where we've got a toy line and a game in the works, and we're going to pitch it as an animated series too. Little dinosaur mushrooms. So you can follow that on Instagram, Fungusaurs, and I'll drop that in the Restream chat as well. My own personal Instagram. Oh, it's getting so loud. I'll keep it super low, 1%. My own personal Instagram is Aiman Akhtar 3D. And I post all sorts of 3D print stuff, light stream penises and stuff too, so you can follow me on there. And I'll drop that in Restream as well. Got Demo, hard to pronounce, Demo to Niem, hello, on YouTube as well. Alright. Twitch is working, ZBrush Live is working. Last announcement, if you're interested in learning about 3D printing in ZBrush, you can follow my course online at Mold 3D Academy. You can go under all classes, self-paced classes, and 3D printing for ZBrush artists. And you'll get 8 weeks worth of lectures on the entire range of 3D printing, costumes, figures, jewelry, multi-part figures, articulation, that's all on there. So I'll drop that in Restream as well. Sweet. Alright, so let's get started on what I did last week, or recap on what I did last week. And we'll move forward. Let's see here. Alright, here we go. So last week I sculpted a Cubone mask for my corgi. My corgi's somewhere in the back over here. I don't know if you guys can see him on here yet. That's Kuma, right there. And we'll clean up this mask today because I've got the print, and we'll try to put him on and see how he looks. I also made a giant bone last week. That has yet to be printed because it was quite a large print. We see near the end here when I'm preparing it to print. It takes up pretty much the entire volume of my 12-inch by 12-inch by 24-inch raised 3D printer. Alright, I'm going to go to a different song. This one's way too obnoxious. Alright, so if you want to follow that last stream, you can on the pixelogic.com ZBrush Live presenters under my name. And what I'm going to do now is give you guys an update on that mask. And then we'll move on to today's lesson, which is articulating in ZBrush. Alright, so first things first. Here's the mask. Fresh print off of the Raise 3D N2 Plus. It's an FDM printer, so you can see all these plasticky supports. And if I put it kind of closer, you'll see there's build lines. But it's a pretty solid print. So supports in FDM come off relatively easily. I can just kind of pinch and pull. And you can see they're peeling off. So that's what I want to do. First is just rip off all these supports. Aim the camera down here so you can see what's happening. I'm trying not to get excited and pull too much off. Really just peeling bit by bit. Here's the support raft. That comes off pretty easily. And I'm just rotating the print around and getting the supports off bit by bit, like an accordion. Last bit's right there. And some more stuck up on the nose here. Sometimes you can take it off all in one go. Other times you take it off in pieces, the supports. There we go. All the supports off. They create a fun sculpture on their own too. Take a look. Very accordion-esque. But ultimately wasted plastic material. I try to keep all of these in a safe place and then reuse them for some sort of art installation because I don't want to just toss them in the trash. But yeah, supports off. And here's the mask. So we still have a little bit of support here in the nostrils, so I can peel those out, or push those out. And then it's looking pretty clean. Yeah, solid print right there. And let's try it on my assistant and see how he likes it. Kuma, up, up, up. Good boy. Alright, so we've got Kuma here. Let's see if I can aim this towards him a little bit more. Move my water bottle out of the way. Okay, sit. Corgis are very food driven, so he'll do just about anything for a treat. And I tend to give him lots of treats when I'm doing this kind of stuff. Let's try it out. And not bad at all. Check it out. Fits perfectly. So I've got some holes in there for an elastic strap, and his mouth is still openable, so plenty of ventilation, plenty of room to breathe. It could be a bit tighter along the sides. I can still put my fingers in front of his eyes, but actually this should be pretty good for him to put on. Good boy. So The way I'm going to do this is show you on the inside of the mask. There's some holes there. Kind of hard to see if I get the right angle. Some holes right there in the inside of the mask that we can drill through a little bit to remove any supports on the inside, and then run elastic wire through those. So let me go ahead and get my drill. And in the meanwhile, if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat. I got Shaquille Green on YouTube saying, like your dog, cute. I know, he's a very cute dog. Thank you. David Shorvath on Twitch, hello yourself. Thanks for joining. Okay. Kuma, can you hold it down for me? Just do the stream for a little bit. All right. So many wires. All right, I'm gonna put this mic back on. There we go. All right, so we've got a few different options. I've got shoelaces here, simple shoelaces that we can run through the holes, or we've got some non-elastic but bendable. I don't even know what to call these. They're kind of just like straw cleaners, I guess. And so you could use these to kind of hold it in place. But I think some elasticity would be good. So I'll try the shoelaces first, and if that doesn't work, I'll try actual elastic. But first thing to do is just open this up. And I just picked these up from a dollar store. Simple shoelaces. There we go. So pretty standard and pretty thin as well. So first thing I need to do is drill a hole inside this area, and the hole's already there, as you can see. If I point my finger out to it, you see that hole right there? It just got some supports on the other end which I need to clear out. So use the drill for that. Probably freak Kuma out a little bit. He's used to all sorts of weird noises by now. Supports on the inside of something, they're a bit harder to remove, but yeah, they come out too. And then on the other side, so this model started in ZBrush. It's now real, and that has the same issues as everything real. It needs to be engineered a bit. There we go. I think I got it. Maybe, maybe. I think I need like one of my needle nose pliers to pull these supports out. Yeah, I'll grab my pliers. Okay, there we go. So, support's cleared out. You can see kind of through there. I have to find the right angle. There we go. Support's cleared out. So then I can just run a shoelace through there and see if I can get a good fit. So, shoelace goes through pretty easily. And I'll run it through both ends. Not sure how tight we want to make this just yet. So, we'll play it by ear. I think I could run it through twice, actually. Yes, I can indeed. All right, great. So the goal then is to see if this will, help it stay on Kuma. So let's try that out. Another little treat to the happy participant. Well, let's try it out. I should have put this in on the other end, but okay, here we go. Try it on. Stay. Good boy. Alright, so I can see that it's going to work pretty well, except the straps are only at the bottom. And what I need to do is also strap it somehow to the back of his head, right behind his ears. So that way it'll actually stay on from two separate points. So otherwise it'll just, as soon as he bends down, it'll still fall off if it's only held in place from the bottom. So one needs to be at the back and one needs to be at the sides. So I'm going to tie this and see if I can pull that off. Alright. Put one of these here and then the other one behind his ears. There's one, there's the other. And yeah, I can tighten it a little bit, but actually that looks pretty good. Let's see if we can have a treat while holding this. Ready? Good boy. That's a happy little Cubone. Alright, so a little bit more messing around I need to do with the mask. As you can see, it's still kind of loose and falling off. Kuma, look up. Up, up, up. Yeah, so you can see it's still pretty loose, so I need to tighten it. But all in all, fit is pretty good. So I'm happy about that. Good boy. Alright, thank you, Kuma. Alright, so that was kind of a update on the mask. Last week's lesson has the actual mask sculpting in ZBrush and prepping. So you can check that out, how I prepped it and printed it. I can post a link if anyone's interested. A second to clean up my workspace a little bit. And we're looking at questions. Let's see. Legionnaire Studios. Hi, Master. Send me greeting. My name's Jexy. Hi, Jexy. Thanks for joining. Alright, Evan Hedges on YouTube's asking, hello, on the last video where you printed the mask, wouldn't you get better surface quality if you split the model and placed it on cut on the edge so it was facing up? Absolutely. Yeah, so what Evan is saying is instead of printing the mask kind of upside down in one go on supports like I did, what if I had cut it in half and then printed it upwards like this? And in FDM printers, the best quality is vertically upwards. So yes, that's true, I would get better surface finish. But what you'll notice in this surface is that I've added a lot of bumpiness and roughness to simulate actual bone. And so it's not a smooth surface anyway. So a little bit of sanding, and I'm sure that this is going to look pretty clean. And then I don't have to actually epoxy and stick two parts of the mask together. It's a perfect fit. So yeah, it really depends. There's no right way in 3D printing. It's just trying different things. Good question, though. All right, Irving DZ is saying articulation time. Yeah, exactly. So that's the lesson we're going to be focusing on today, now that we've done our little show and tell. Thank you to my little assistant, Kuma. He's been a good boy, earning all these treats today. All right, so let's go back here and scale this down. ZBrush Live is a go, Twitch is a go, sweet. Pixelogic, ZBrush Live, presenters. So if you go to presenters at Pixelogic and ZBrush Live, you can navigate over to my name. See the past broadcasts and schedules, and there's the Cubone mask. So I'll copy that link and I'll post it in the chats. So if you're interested in checking out last week's stream and how I went about making that Cubone mask, that's in there. So now, what am I doing this week? Well, this is what I posted on my Instagram, which is today's topic. We're going to be covering articulation in 3D printing. I've got this doll here, sculpted by my friend Jake Kemper and myself. Jake's an awesome 3D artist based out of Florida, and he sculpted this in ZBrush, and I basically tuned it up, and I'm going to now basically add the articulation for toys. So I'll show you that process and how I go about articulating characters for toys. Still have John Wick as my wallpaper. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie, but I'm a big fan of the franchise, so I just saw it twice in theaters. So fun. Just heard news that Keanu may also be coming into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They've been trying to find the right role for him, which is super exciting. Because I don't think there's anyone that doesn't like Keanu Reeves. Alright, so what you see on my screen is the doll, sculpted by Jake Kemper. The design is based on a client of mine, and her name is Shannon Victoria. So Shannon's designs. And I can show you some of Shannon's drawings so you get an idea of what we're working from. So very, very stylized, very long legs, oval head shape. These are all drawings by Shannon Victoria. Some of the articulation references that she sent for how she'd like to be able to move the doll. And articulation is tricky because the more articulation you do, the less pretty something looks because there's more gaps and lines and breakages. But here's Shannon Victoria's style, and so that's what we were trying to aim for. Eyelashes will be added on later. Eyes will be marbles that get painted and put in. So our goal is to just get the 3D mesh. And then the head will actually come off the top of the head so that we can put the marble eyes in place. But here's the basic reference for the character, and here's the model. You can see some things change when you take it to 3D. You need to make sure it's an appealing sculpt, and so that's the #1 priority. No gaps between the toes, no gaps between the fingers, just so that way we actually have pretty, like if you print something like this, it's more likely to break. And if you print it like this, it's much more likely to just meld between the fingers and be a solid piece. So you have to think about engineering. The eyes are on their own layers, but I haven't done any mesh hollowing or anything yet. So we're going to get to that bit by bit. I'm going to start by, let's hide this base. We don't need to see that at the moment. We've got this character, and I'm going to start by saving, because you always want to save your scene as you're doing this. And I'm going to duplicate my mesh, just so I have a previous iteration untouched. And let's start articulating and adding the points where we're going to do the articulation. So let's pull up a reference, or two. So we're looking for a hinge joint at the knee, simple rotation pivot joint at the feet and the ankles. Same here at the hands. Now, at hands and feet, it would be better to put a ball joint, like so you can actually get the full range of motion. But in this case, I think it may be best to just put a rotation. So instead of doing this, you can just do this. We'll see. We'll get around to that. Ball joint at the shoulders. Same thing at the neck. We're going to go with the pivot and some sort of custom joint here at the waist, which would allow a more flexible range of motion. So we're just going to try to play around and see what we can do for articulation today. Another reference. So pretty clean. Clean articulation is what we're going for. And what I mean by that is just not anything extra. The range of motion versus appeal is the line we're walking while we're doing this. And I will pull up the Restream chat so I have it on the side for questions. All right, Irving Diaz saying, I have been asking about articulation stuff on Facebook. Perfect, and now you get to see it. He's asking if anyone knows the Acid Rain figures. No, I don't. I could look them up. Let's see. Manav Bhatia saying, big fan, sir. Thank you, dude. Appreciate you tuning in. All right, I'm going to look up Acid Rain figures to see what that is all about. Looks like highly articulated toys. All right, so this is a good example actually, because when you take a closer look at these characters, they're pretty bulky, they're pretty metallic, and these lend themselves towards articulation because you don't actually, it's not a clean, smooth mesh, so it's not skin. It's segmented, so you can actually get away with having an actual full ball for the joint for the shoulder. But that's not what we're doing. We're going with more Barbie. So if you look at Barbie, and let's see, there are Barbie in a bikini. So we can get an idea. Here we go. All right, so if you check this out, they didn't even articulate her knees. They didn't articulate the elbow. They didn't articulate the feet. They actually choose in Mattel to not articulate pieces just so they look prettier. And that's the line we're talking about. If you look at a lot of Barbies, the knees aren't articulated, the hands aren't articulated. It's only the shoulder and the hips because those parts can be covered with clothing. So that's the line we're talking about. Now we're going to go for a little bit more articulation than that, but we're trying to keep it smooth. So let's start, and I'll show you how I go about it. So I've created this custom IMM brush called Articulation. I haven't shared this with anyone just yet, but if there is interest, I can put it up on Gumroad or something. And I've got different types of articulation in here. So let me demo the brush first so you understand what it looks like. Go to a cube, make a polymesh 3D, go into edit mode, and I'll draw some of these out. So here's the snap-in pin. And so that's a simple snap-in. Let me split it. And it's made up of just one mesh. But if you look on the inside of the mesh, you'll see what's going on. We've got an internal component, which is a cylinder that goes up, comes out a little bit, and then comes in. And there's a little thickness to it. So there's space between the outside and the inside. This is what's going to create the snap on the inside. And what I'm doing is basically using this as a Boolean mesh. So I subtract between two separate pieces and you'll see it work that way. So let's try that right now. I'll use the first part, the snap in Boolean, for the neck. And let's just add a simple articulation there. So I'll come here to the center and I'll draw it out. Rotate it in place. Oh, too far. There we go. Move it in place. And I'm going to do a split unmasked points so that it's on its own layer. Now that it's on its own layer, we can do something really cool, which is we can just click on this half moon icon in the subtool palette. And if your render booleans is on, the live booleans, you can get a preview of what it's going to be like when it's splitting through. So we can choose where we want to put this joint. We can try to hide it a little bit by moving it up. And that's what I think it makes the most sense. We'll just hide it as high as possible. And you can see right now it's clipping through the chin a little bit too, and we don't want that. So what I'm going to do is just turn on solo mode, and I'll clip this edge a little bit because I don't need it to cut through the chin. And there we go, not clipping through the chin anymore. But now this should be working as a snap-in pin. Simple as that. You've got a Boolean cutter, and you drop it in, and let's go to the mesh, and we'll go to Boolean, make Boolean mesh, and let's see what it does. It should take our Dynamesh and split this into two. Evan Hedges on YouTube saying I'm super interested in that brush. I haven't released it yet because I'm not super stoked with it. It's not perfect, but that's, I guess, the nature of these things. They're never quite perfect. I may just release it and then make a part 2. All right, here we go. So here is the Boolean mesh that was created by ZBrush. You can see it creates it as its own, not subtool, but as its own tool entirely. So you have to select it there. And if I look at polyframe and I go auto groups, now it should separate the head from the body. And let's see what's going on at just the body. So the body now has the neck with the snap-in internal component. And if we invert, whoop, did clip, just meant to do select lasso. Let's invert that. And on the inside here, we've got the negative. Now there's some weird thing happening here with the mesh. And that's okay, we're not dealing with that just yet. We can correct errors later. But let's look on the inside. And that's what I'm talking about. I'll try to select a poly edge here, invert. All right, here we go. So now we can see how the snap-in pin is going into the neck, basically into the head area, and it's going to rotate there because once it snaps in, it's secured, and you can rotate the head full 360 around that point. And so that's how easy it is to work with articulation in ZBrush if you prepare these kind of Boolean cutter brushes ahead of time. Now I'm going to take that same snap-in pin and that I applied on the neck, and I can apply the same thing to the hands here and to the feet here, just to give them the ability to rotate. For the knees and the elbows, we're going to do a hinge joint. So let me show you that joint next. So I'm going back to my subtool here, the one that was before Booleaning. I'm actually going to delete all for this one because I don't want to crowd my scene. Let's see here. I'll come back to that. All right, so the next brush that I want to show you, next part of this brush I want to show you is this, where to go? Hinge joint. Here we go, hinge Boolean. And the way this works is similar. This is the shape, and when you cut it out, it should create a hinge for you. So this is kind of hard to demonstrate on a cube, so I'm just going to show you on the actual character. I'm going to come forward here to the knees. Let me make sure my OBS stream is working. Cool. Whoop. All right. So looking at the knees here from the front, I've got my hinge Boolean selected. Turn on my X symmetry. Here we go. And I'll just draw it on. And I can hold shift as I draw it on in order to have it come perfectly forward as well, in theory. It's not doing it right now. Usually it works. Right now it's trying to draw it on the normal axis of what I'm trying. You know what, that's fine. I'll just rotate it in place. You always need to rotate these brushes a little bit anyway. You want to try to line them up. Now look at it from the side and move it in place. You know what, I think in this case it might be better to not do this with symmetry on and just mirror it over, because it's going to give me more flack later. So I'm just going to do it on one side at a time. Here we go. That actually drew perfectly forward. And I'll move it into place right about there. And you don't actually know if it's in place until you turn on the Boolean cutter. And before I do that, I need to split it. So I'll split unmask points. There we go. And it's a Boolean now, so we should be able to see it and move this into the right place. So I want this rotation to happen right from the center of the knee. And you can see now the back of the knee is going to have this gouge. And this is what I meant, and this is why Barbies don't have articulated feet or legs oftentimes, because you can't hide that gouge. You could try to sculpt it away a little bit, but not too much. Move this forward a bit, move this back. And just try to see what the best placement of this will be. You can also rotate it a bit. So with this rotated a little bit towards the side, what that means is when this rotates up, the legs are going to hit each other. So that's probably not the best move. I'll make sure that this is facing straight back so the legs can rotate back independently and not smack into each other as they go backwards. Alright, so actually that's pretty good, pretty clean. Let's try moving it a little bit off to the side, see if we can get a slightly better look. Nope, not really. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'm going to keep that there and I'll look at it solo for a second. Z plugin, subtool master, mirror. And I can mirror it over the x-axis. And when I mirror it, I want to make sure it's append as a new subtool. There we go, got it mirrored, and I'll also use that as a cutter. So there we go. Now we've got the hinge joints on the knees. Pretty straightforward, right? We'll do the same thing on the arms here. So I'll navigate up to the arms and make sure my X symmetry is off because I'm going to do it one at a time. Click on the hinge Boolean, draw it out. Split unmask points, move it in place, and move it upwards. Trying to keep it on that normal axis whenever possible. And let's turn on the cutter. Alright, so here's a perfect example of how I did it backwards. Right now, this is the limiter. This is the end point of it. And this is where it can actually rotate. And so what's happening right now is the way I've drawn it out, it's going to bend backwards. So it's not actually bending forwards this way. So instead of drawing it out facing the back, I have to draw it out facing the front. Now, easiest thing I could do is probably just rotate it. So I'll do that. Click on the rotation. And I'll rotate it all the way around. and move it into place. There we go. Now we've got the rotation working in the right direction, but we still need to refine how this looks a little bit. You can scale the whole thing up. You can move it out to the side a little bit. Scale it down. Trying to find the best place so that we can get the range of motion while keeping the appeal as intact as possible. So ideally this arm would be a bit thicker so that we could get the full kind of clean look, but it's just not that thick of an arm. So we're going to have to do some sculpting in post to try to clean this up a little bit, just to smooth some of these areas out. But I could try to get slightly better position. So I'll try that. And I'll rotate. And this should work. And we can come in later and clean up this inside a little bit. And so that gives us the hinge for the arm and the elbow bending in the right direction and the knee bending in the right direction. But you can see when you do articulation how it gouges out a bunch of space from the model. And there's no way to hide that. Like even here, if we take a look at the reference, you've got that gouge right there on the front of the elbow. If we were looking at the knees, it's on the back side. So the more you articulate, the more appeal you lose. Let me see if you guys have any questions going in Restream. Will the pin in place be there as part of the final piece? All right, so that's a great question. So what MechDeca on Twitch is asking is this pin, is that going to be there as part of the final piece? So let me do the Boolean operation again, just as it is, and show you guys what's going to be happening with those pins for the hinge brush. Save the scene. All right. And I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to select my doll, and I'm going to go to Boolean, make Boolean mesh. Now there's a few more things that's going to Boolean right now, so it might take a second to Dynamesh, and screen might lag, so just hold on. All right, looks like it got done. Let's see. I'm going to navigate up to the new tool that was created. I'm going to click on Auto Groups. And now you can see the hand, this left hand is its own thing, and the feet are their own thing. So let's take a look at what's going on with the feet. I'm going to do a simple thing. I'm just going to do a group split and see how it goes down. So here's what's happening with the body. We've got the arm, and you can see there's no pin in there. That's because the pin is going to be on its own. So the pin gets printed, and it's its own piece that you have to slide into place. These are the leg pins. Here's the arm. So there's the arm, there's the pin for the arm, and then there's the rest of the body that it goes into. So I can try to demonstrate this a little bit better. So that's one Boolean cutter that can create 3 separate pieces. Now, as you can see, I didn't do a perfectly even job here. It's a little bit not even from the left and right. So that's something I can take a look at. But position-wise, it looks pretty good. I'll adjust this in my cutter. And the same thing down here. Move this out of the way. So that's what that Boolean cutter is doing. So I hope that answers your question, MaxDeck. All right. MacDeck. All right, cool. All right, so there we go. So now we've got the hand and the feet. The feet look pretty good. I mean, the knees. I want to move where this one was at because I can see the thickness isn't even on both sides. So I'll go back to my articulation scene. Select from the right angle this piece. And I'll just move it a little bit more that way. It's hard when the arms are so thin because this brush was designed for having a little bit thicker joints. Alright, so that should do the trick. I'm going to do the same thing I did before to mirror it. Z plugin, subtool master, mirror, append as new subtool over the x-axis. So I'll get it over to the other side and use that as a cutter as well. So now we've got the hinge joints set up. I'm going to set up a few more snap-in pin joints for the same kind I used on the neck, on the wrists, possibly, and on the feet here. All right, so I'm going to go to snap-in pin there, and let's draw that on. I'm going to split unmasked points. Whoa, there we go. Rotate it in place. And look at it from different angles. I might do this a little bit higher. You could turn transparent mode on and you can see what's going on inside. That might help. And you want to try to make it as centered as possible. And possibly even a bit smaller. You want to make the key as large as possible, because you know, if the arm is a heavy print, it'll fall off if it's just a little tiny one. And let's turn it into a cutter, and there we go. Now the reason I'm thinking this should be a simple rotation joint and not a full ball joint is just the way I want this to look. I don't want this to have a lot of like stuff gouged out of the wrist. It's already pretty thin as is. And if you do want to have different hands, you can just have swappable ones. So you can just remove a hand that's like flat like this, and then have another one that's a fist, have another one that's a point. So easier to work it that way. Better too. All right, I'm going to do the same thing, mirror it over the x-axis. Set that as a cutter, and there we go. Now we've got both sides. Now, in the center here, it should probably be a custom ball joint, same as the shoulders. But let's try that. Let's try a ball joint and see how it would look and work, because that'll dictate ultimately what we decide to do with it. Before that, let me finish the feet. The feet will be simple. Same kind of snap-in pins. There we go. Move them a little bit to the center. Split them. Turn on transparency mode. I might even make these a bit longer. Just move it. Scale it down. And since ZBrush added Boolean cutters, it made articulation just so much easier. Used to be you had to do it all manually. All right, and then the same question for the feet. Why am I doing just a simple rotation snap-in pin rather than you know, a full-on ball joint so I get the full range of motion? Partially it's for appeal. The other reason is that we're gonna have swappable feet as well. What I mean by that is we're gonna have shoes. So these should just swap into place. And so we're gonna add in snap-in pins to those as well. But we'll come back to that. I think that should be good as a place to do this rotation from. And I'm going to split, no, it's already been split. I'm going to mirror it over. There we go. Set that to cutter. All right, sweet. So we've got a bunch of parts already articulated. Didn't take very long at all. And now let's get to the ball joints and the shoulder and figure out what we're going to do for the hips and the diaphragm. Save the scene first. All right, Capiroto Africano is saying, where do I find this insert brush? It's not out there yet. It doesn't exist. But if you guys want to just follow me on Instagram, Aiman Akhtar 3D. I'll post it and I'll drop the link, and you guys can see when it goes live. I'll do it next week. I don't really have time to right now, but you know, I'll drop that link in the Restream chat. All right, cool. So back at this, scene is saved. I've got a insert mesh brush for everything, but the ball joint one, it doesn't work really perfectly. So let's take a look at what's going on with the ball joint one. I'll go back to my cube to demonstrate it and draw it out. Just hold shift as I do that. And I know it looks really strange, but let's take a look and break it down how it's working. Split unmasked points. We've got multiple pieces here. If we do an auto groups, we've got the Boolean cutter for this shape. We've got, hide it for a second. We've got a ball joint in there with a snap-in pin. So the snap-in pin allows the ball joint to rotate left to right. And then this is the Boolean cutter, which allows you to create a pin. So there's multiple cutters and multiple pieces in this. So this is basically the core of a ball joint. You've got a snap-in pin attached to a wheel. Gosh, sometimes you just can't find a polygon edge when you want to invert. There we go. This is the side of the ball joint. And this cylinder here is what's responsible for doing the Boolean cutting so that we can have a pin. So it's a bit more of a complicated piece that needs a few more rounds. I also have something simpler, which is what I've demonstrated in my previous classes, which is a ball joint on its own. Let me draw it. Split unmasked points. Here we go. So here's the ball joint as I've demonstrated in my previous classes on Mold3D. It is articulated, and this part kind of gets merged into whatever, say, the bicep, for example. So I don't know, I might use one or the other. They're both designed for slightly thicker characters, not like Barbie style, but let's see what we can make work for this character right here. Might be a little bit tougher because she's in such a relaxed pose, and she should be ideally slightly up higher so that we can work with the ball joint. But let's try. I'll select the ball joint with Boolean. Let's see what happens if we just do it right down the center in the diaphragm. There we go. Got it drawn out. Rotate it in place. A bit too far. Bring it back. There we go. Let's scale it up. Just split unmasked points. And do a deformation size. So the ball joint is probably not ideal at all for the diaphragm, but let's take a look at what would happen if we do. Same as before, all we need to do is just switch it to be a cutter, and we can see what's going on. So it looks pretty clean and straightforward from the outside. I just don't think it's going to work. We can take a look at what's going on inside in theory by just hiding parts of the mesh. Now, it won't really show properly, because this mesh, this brush isn't that simple. You don't just turn it into a Boolean. Only part of it is used for a Boolean, which is this part right here, and then the cylinder cutter. everything else is actually merged in and sculpted onto the body. So it's not ideal for the diaphragm. Let's see if we can make it work for the shoulders. And it's going to be tough at this angle, so I might need to actually change the angle of the arms. Come on over to the side. Move it over as well. Bringing it into place. And I'll rotate around as well. There we go. Now we're going to scale the whole thing down a bit. And it's still useful to turn on transparency mode to see what's going on. And I'm just trying to line up this ball joint, front to side. And let's hide a few of these pieces and see how this is going to work. So if that's the cutter, then we're going to be left with this shape. And with this shape, we're going to have the center part go into the body, and then these outer parts be sculpted into the arm. So this is the right positioning for it, but I'm just worried that it's not going to work very well with the arms being in a relaxed state like they are. I'm going to go for it anyway because we're going to need to adjust this area after the fact anyway. So I'm going to go to my transparency mode, rotate just a bit more, move just a bit more. And just try to find a slightly better angle if I can. All right. Yeah, just not ideal. I'll rotate it a bit the other way. See if that's any better. And the snap-in pin, since it's so long, it might actually interfere with the one from the other side. So we're going to need to do some adjusting there. I will go ahead and make sure it's on its own piece. Yep, it is. Navigate to the top angle. Do a mask with my mask lasso to select just this area. Control tap a few times to soften that mask. I'm going to move the whole thing in, just so the snap-in pin isn't so large. That's still a bit too long. Alright, I'm going to do this for the first round and then we'll see how that looks. Come over here to the rotation. Slight rotation there as well. Yeah, a lot of the times articulation is just finding the right angle for these things. Angle that works from multiple sides. That's the problem with working in 3D. You've got to consider all the angles. So I don't know. I'm going to make it a slight bit shorter again. All right, let's try it. So we've got this piece as the ball joint. It's made up of multiple poly groups. So I want some of these to be grouped together. So I'll press Control W to unite these two halves of these spheres. The Boolean cutter I want on its own layer. This piece is good on its own. So yeah, this is how I want it to be. And I'll do a group split. Now that we've done that, actually I should have duplicated it before I did that. So I'm going to duplicate it just so I have a backup in case I want to go back to it, and then I'll do a group split. Auto groups. This is one thing that it's kind of a pain to work with in ZBrush is the being able to select things sometimes, because you have to click on a face, not an edge. There we go. All right, now I'll do a group split. All right, so I'll use this piece as the cutter. And I'm going to duplicate my mesh and just do this with only this arm, just to see if it works. Group as Dynamesh sub. Turn off transparent, turn off solo. And there's the cut it's going to make. So it's not ideal because we've got this mesh here along the side. We can try to move with the mesh a little bit as well to prepare for that articulation. Adjusting the sculpt beforehand so I don't have to adjust it so much after. All right, and let's try doing the Boolean cutting. Group is Dynamesh sub. I want to make sure that Dynamesh is on for both of these pieces. Merge down. And Dynamesh. And it should, in theory, cut that piece out. So instead of make Boolean mesh, this is the same thing, just within the subtool palette. Okay, it's thinking about it. It's thinking about it. Okay, That looks to be done, but I'm not sure. Yep. Okay. So if we look at what's going on here, I haven't done any of the other articulations on this. This is solely to just try out the ball joint. Dynamesh resolution was too low. And so you can see it's going to try to merge it with the other piece. So if I do an auto groups right now, it may not split. Yep, it didn't. So what that means is I just have to make sure my Dynamesh resolution is higher when I do this cut. So I'll go to Geometry, Dynamesh Resolution, change that from 2500 to, let's say, 3500. And let's see how that goes. This may crash the computer a bit, but let's see. All right, that did better, but it's still merging these pieces together. So if I do an auto groups, it still probably won't separate the shoulder. Yeah, it's not. So that's not working. At least not at this resolution. The max resolution I can go on this is 4096. I'm going to try to first Dynamesh this. So I'll split unmasked or split hidden. And since this is a decimated mesh, sometimes that can throw issues. I'm going to just try to Dynamesh it as is. And now I'll try to use it as the cutter. Dynamesh again. Trying with that 2520 resolution again, now that I have two Dynamesh pieces. That's working slightly better. Maybe it'll work at 4096 now. Now, same issue. It's just too thin, too small to work. All right, so the easiest way I can affect this change is going to my deformation palette and reducing the size of the whole mesh. And I'll go once and twice, because doing that will increase the Dynamesh resolution. Now when I try to Dynamesh a 4096, it'll be probably more than 5 million. So actually I'm going to try 2056 again. I think I did it backwards. I think I was supposed to scale it upwards. Yes, I was. Demos. Okay, so I'm going to go to my deformation tab. Instead of scaling downwards, I'm going to scale upwards twice. So there's once to 100, twice to 100. And now that should increase my Dynamesh resolution. So let's try that again. Still giving me trouble. It's working at 3.8 million polys, so it's not making it a change at all. I'm going to try to turn on this groups button to see if that'll make a difference, and let's see what it does. Usually making it smaller is what increases the Dynamesh resolution, so I'm surprised that didn't work. Because making it bigger is definitely not working. And groups isn't working either. All right. For the sake of the demo and just to move forward, I'm going to do the solution that I know will work, which is, well, it's at the right scale. I'm just going to thicken up that Boolean cutter. So So I'll go to Subtool, Split, Hidden. Navigate over to the side here for this mesh. And it's going to be a bit tricky because I don't have it polygroup just to the end. Let's see if I can do a mask selection. And if not, I'll try to use Z Modeler or something. Actually, Z Modeler might be the way to go. Alright, with Z Modeler selected, it's going to be tough since I don't have a lot of faces. Nah, Z Modeler is not going to work because there's so many different faces. I'll just have to look at it from the side and try to eyeball. And this one's really hard to eyeball. There we go. And select the mask and just mask off like half of this mesh, only making sure to mask only this one side. Invert that mask selection, just move it out, effectively making this cut a bit thicker. So it went from there to there. And now that should work to cut. Pretty sure that would work. A little bit more sculpting. As you can see, ball joints are just inherently more complex. All right, there's the cutter. Let's try it. Group as Dynamesh sub on that point. Duplicate it just in case to have the backup, and then we'll merge down. We'll do a geometry Dynamesh, and let's hope it works. All right, here we go. Thickening it seems to have done the trick. I'll click on Auto Groups now, and it should separate the arm, in theory. It does not separate the arm. Why not? Let's take a look at what's going on inside. Display properties double is on. Okay, there's what's going on inside. So there's some jankiness happening on the inside of this mesh right now. Project was off, so I'm not sure why it's doing that. But maybe just because these parts were simply too close to each other. And in the scale of my scene that I'm working, this brush doesn't work very well at all. But that shouldn't be happening. That's way too much jankiness. I'm going to undo. Select this mesh. Take a look at what's going on in here. So this looks fine to me, just like should work as I have done in the past, but for some reason in this scene it's not working. And that could just be the resolution and the size that I'm working in the ZBrush file is not working. Noob only is asking how to unmerge a subtool. Easiest way is to just select the pieces that you want and split. So like say if I select that piece and it's hidden, I can go to subtool, split, hidden, and it'll bounce it off onto its own separate subtool. Alright, so this is disheartening because I'm not really sure why it's not working in this demo. But that's kind of the rule of demos online, is that something's bound to go wrong. It's kind of like teaching a class. Whenever you're doing it in front of students, there's always hiccups. Alright, I'm going to try it a few more times. I could try to do a deformation inflate, or I could try to deflate it a bit. Or just try to scale the scene differently. Now I don't want to move it because then that'll effectively move all of the other pieces that I've already got in place. And I don't want to do that. So instead of trying to do the Dynamesh route and merge down, I'm going to try to do the make Boolean mesh and see if that gives me any better result. No guarantee of this, but let's try. Okay, make Boolean mesh has got it on its own subtool. Let's do an auto groups and see if that worked. All right, so there, that worked. Interesting. So make Boolean mesh did it where Dynamesh didn't do it well. And so there's just a difference in the algorithm, the way ZBrush has prepared the make Boolean mesh, that it tends to be a bit better at these things. Good to know. So there's the first part of my ball joint. It's got the snap-in pin for the ball-shaped hole, and now I can work the rest of my arm. So good to know that works. I'm going to try to mess with it a little bit more, and then continue. Uh-oh. Worked too fast. Unrecoverable error. Gonna have to quit ZBrush and open it up again. But good to know we figured it out. Make Boolean mesh works better than Dynamesh. I'm updating my workflows all the time. I'm going to open ZBrush again. Let's see. There is a recovered Z project, Z tool, so let's see if I can open that. Looks like it's crashed while trying to open the recovered Z tool. Alright, so I'm just going to go back to my previous save, which I don't think was that long ago. I save pretty often. But it's likely before we started messing with the ball joint. Okay. Kill the range, double the scene, a half, load tool, and I believe it's called Articulation 1. So yeah, one thing to know if you are planning on doing a lot of articulation in ZBrush, you're going to have to deal with the crashes. All right, here we go. So we've got the hinge joints, we've got the snap-in pin joints. Those are all working properly. I'm going to go to render booleans, turn live booleans on so we can see those working well. And the next thing we want to do is try to figure out the ball joints. And so I'll come back over here. And this time it should work better. Fingers crossed. I've got my insert mesh brush, this custom brush that I've created. I'm going to go over to the ball joint with boolean. Draw it on. A bit large. I'll split unmask point. And going to try to rotate this in place. Gizmo is probably a good idea to try this with. Actually, you know what? Before I do that, I already know that I'm going to want to shorten this a little bit. So I'll turn the gizmo off, go to my move tool, and just shorten that. Sometimes it's a good thing to restart. Alright, now we're going to go to rotate. Rotate this whole thing. Move it over. Move it down. Turn on transparency mode so we can get a sense of what's happening. And we're going to want to rotate this all again so that the pins are coming out the sides. Just trying to make it look good from as many angles as I can. And then we'll give it a shot again. Alright, let's try that out. Do a little bit of resculpting. So we'll do an auto groups on this piece. We're going to merge some of these groups together. And then we'll do a group split. Next, I'm going to take this piece and, you know what, for a second I'm just going to leave it as is, turn it on as a cutter. And see if it works just even with this thinness, without having to thicken it at all. Let's just see if it works. Alright, so let's try it. I'm going to leave this as is, leave that there, and go to make boolean mesh. With pretty much everything else, you know what, I'm going to turn everything else off because I only want to focus on this ball joint right now. So all of my other subtools are off. It's just the shoulder and this cutter. We'll go to boolean and make boolean mesh. Alright, looks like it did the trick. Let's go check it out. We'll go to polyframes, we'll do an auto groups and see if it worked. Looks like it did. Sweet. Alright, so Yeah, Make Boolean Mesh definitely a lot better than Dynamesh. I'm going to try this out. So we've got the shoulder piece, but that shouldn't be happening. So I gotta try to adjust that. We don't want to see the ball coming through the top as much. I'm going to merge these pieces down again. And try to make sure that that is one solid piece. There we go. I'm just going to move that shoulder back a little bit. All right, looking like it should work. I'll delete all here. And with these two pieces selected again, I'll go and try Make Boolean Mesh again. Beanlight Games is saying, yeah, Dynamesh combines meshes if the thickness between them is shorter than the poly size. Make Boolean Mesh should work even with a thin separator because it doesn't try to do that. Thank you, Bean. All right, so that's looking like it's working. Auto group again. There we go, nice. All right, so now we've got a functioning first part to this ball joint. And when I mean first part, I mean really this is the first part. Because what we're going to do next is try to add some of this ball joint functionality that we need into here. So how do we do that? Well, let's split, no, not delete, split hidden. And so we know we like this piece. That's good. We can try to refine this a little bit by just cleaning up. We can do a Dynamesh. Relatively high resolution. And smooth this out. And if smooth doesn't work really well, we can go to Lightbox under Brush. There should be a smooth folder. And we're going to navigate to smooth stronger. Now when you press shift, it's going to just, regardless of how many polys you're working with, it's going to smooth it out a lot quicker. And we don't want to mess with the inside of the ball. We only want to mess with the outside. Just smooth it out a little bit. Alright, so I'm digging this, and we're going to do the same thing on the other end. But first, let's see if the rest of the ball joint will work like this. I'm going to append these pieces into my scene. So I'm going to go over here, append, append, and append. That way I can just work in a clean scene. This one we're going to use as a cutter. So the pin's going to be there. That's pretty straightforward. So I'll hide that for now. Looks like I appended the same piece twice. Don't need that. I need the other piece. That piece. There we go. So what we have to do first is merge this arm onto there. So navigate up, turn on transparency mode. And let's start working on the inside of this arm. The easiest way to do it is probably just going to my select lasso tool and hiding a bunch of it. I'll split the hidden. So this mesh is off. And what we want to do is combine a few pieces. So the piece that fits into the body we like. So this we like. The piece that we want to fit into here should only be able to rotate. Basically only be able to rotate in one direction. It's a simple snap-in pin. And so that piece is going to be this one right here. That's the piece that goes into the shoulder socket. And so that is good as is. We don't need to change anything about that. What we want to do is merge the arm with this other piece. This one right here. And so what I'll do is I'll actually delete most of this arm. I'll do a Dynamesh first. Delete hidden. Dynamesh again. And I'm going to try to combine this arm into this piece. So let's merge these two pieces after we do a little bit of sculpting. I still have the smooth stronger on. And we're going to try to create this custom ball joint. Just smoothing it in, sculpting it into place. Not caring about what's going on the inside just yet. Just trying to make the outside look good. And I'm glad that Make Boolean Mesh did the trick for us earlier. I'm not going to worry too much about adding anatomical detail like triceps and bicep stuff properly, because this is a pretty simplified character. Navigate over to the side, go to my clip brush, and I can try to clip some of the stuff away too. Keeping it clear, keeping it clean. All right, let's merge these two pieces together. So we'll merge down and we'll do a Dynamesh again. So now all these pieces are merged. See how that's looking? Now let's take a look at what we're working with. We've got the arm here, or the body socket here. We've got the piece that goes into that body socket. And we've got this arm. Now this arm still needs a little bit of love. What I'm going to do is duplicate this piece right here, and we'll use that as a cutter for the arm. With make Boolean on, we can actually see what's happening there. It's cutting downward this way. And just to have a little bit more room to work with, I'm going to go to my deformation and inflate that a little bit. There we go. So now we have a clean internal component. I can also sculpt this piece a little bit, just to make it look a bit cleaner. And I'm not worried too much about the pin because we'll do the same thing with the pin. We'll use a Boolean cutter there as well. All right, there we go. With that working, I'll go group as Dynamesh sub, merge down, and Dynamesh. And it should cut that piece out. God, Dynamesh just really doesn't work nearly as well as Boolean cutters do, huh? All right, I'm going to undo that, and I'll do a Boolean cut and then append it into my scene. Group split. Set that as the cutter. Those are the only two pieces visible. And we'll do a Boolean make Boolean mesh. It's going to make it its own thing. Here we go. Yeah, so much better. And then we'll append this into this scene. Turn off the arm and this mesh right there. And let's take a look at the parts we've got again. We've got the shoulder. We've got this internal piece. And then we've got the arm. So that, and that, and that. Last piece we need is the pin. So we need to generate a pin. And that's what this cutter's there for. So let's navigate up a little bit. Turn on some of these pieces so we know what we're working with. I'm going to duplicate that piece. I'm going to go to my deformation tab. You know, before I do anything else, I'm going to save because it's been a little bit since I've saved. And I'll go to deformation, inflate. And I'll just do like a big cylindrical sphere here. Doesn't really matter what it looks like because we're going to be cutting it out anyway. Dynamesh that, smooth it out. We can do an intersection actually to intersect between some of these pieces, but I don't want to deal with that. I'm just going to use this cutter to create the pin for me. Group as Dynamesh sub. Only these pieces on, the two that I'm working with, and I'll click make Boolean mesh again. Now that didn't seem to work very well because it's all inside. So even though it's working, it's all like internals, and we need it to work externally. So delete that. Navigate over to my mesh again. And I want to make sure that I can see the edges. Now it should work. Dynamesh that. With only these two pieces visible, make Boolean mesh. There's that piece. We'll go auto groups. Select only that, delete hidden, and append this back into my scene. And now this can be renamed to our pin. Hide these pieces. And we'll sculpt the pin into place. And then we'll have our finished ball joint. Closing off that edge, closing off this edge, Dynamesh it, smooth it out a bit, smooth it out a bit. And now that we've got these pieces in play, now we can refine a little bit. And so that's how you go about creating a ball joint. Now to me, this area is a bit too thin. So I may try to redo this with all of this ball joint stuff being a bit lower. But the way the client wanted was these high shoulders. So it's kind of hard to pull that off without a little bit of cutting in. Luckily, I still have this piece of the cutter. So if I want, I can try to move the whole thing and just try to move the cutter. Switch over to my select lasso tool. Delete hidden. Dynamesh again. So we have a clear edge to work with. And I can see about moving the whole thing down just a little bit. Or I'll keep it there for now, and I'll do a little bit of inflating around it just to give this piece a little bit more strength. And then use the Boolean cutter again where it's at. Also use stuff like the clay brush without any RGB turned on. And H polish and all my sculpting brushes really. in order to refine this shape a bit better. Smoothing all this stuff out. I'm going to come to the back here, clean that a bit, smooth that a bit. Just trying to make sure it looks good from multiple angles and getting rid of any bends and stuff that I don't need. Whoop. Too much rotation. Alright, so we had to fight the Dynamesh a little bit. Got Boolean mesh to work for us. And now, almost done articulating the shoulder. Got Wanksta on Twitch saying, how's it going? It's going well, man. Figuring it out. So got the cutter in place again, helping me refine some area that I had lost a little bit of detail. And I will click on Make Boolean Mesh again. There's the Boolean mesh. You can Dynamesh the whole thing if Dynamesh is on. Control W to unify, and then just smooth out a little bit here as well. All right. So let's mirror it over to the other side. Let's see what happens if we go to the Modify Topology Mirror and Weld. That's mirroring from the other side. So I'm going to go Z Plugin, Subtool Master, Mirror, the X-axis. And then do the mirror and weld. Let's append that onto my body. Or append on my new body, I should say. And turn on some of these pieces. There's the shoulder. There's the pin on the inside of the shoulder. And that pin. So yeah, there's the ball joint. little bit more complicated than the rest of the hinges and then the snap-in pins that work perfectly with the Boolean. The ball requires a little bit more custom attention, sculpting in ZBrush, but worked pretty well once we figured it out. We'll do a merge visible, and then we'll go back to our original subtool and append that back on. So append on the merged piece. Move that up to the top. Now let's hide some of these pieces, turn on our Wanksta is asking, is this clip available later? Absolutely. Yeah, all of this stuff is saved to ZBrush Live. So you can search for ZBrush Live presenters, and you can find my info, and it'll be there. Navigating around and turning on all of these hinge joints and snap-in pin joints that we created. I'll do a group split here. So all these pieces kind of go on their own layers. Navigate over to here and do a Z plugin subtool master mirror over the x-axis so it comes onto the other end. And do the same thing with this pin. And this internal component. Alright, so if we look in transparency mode, we can see all of the pieces that are there that are going to get cut out of the body. And if we turn off transparency mode, we can see they do get cut out. So that's as far as I'm going to go with articulation in this scene, in this stream. And turn on the base again, and turn on the eyeballs. Hope you guys found that useful in seeing not only me pull off working with this brush, but just some of the struggles that come up in ZBrush and how to get past them. That's really the benefit of these streams, is just watching other people work and how they deal when they come against a roadblock. So I've got ball joints there. I've got to figure out what to do for the diaphragm and add some more ball joints for the hips. And then this character will be almost fully articulated. We're going to have to slice her head and add the space for the marble eyes to come in. But yeah, next week when you tune in to this stream, I should have a print for you guys to see. And then we can test the prototype and see how it's actually functioning. So thanks again for joining in, and hope you enjoyed the stream. I've got, let's see, I'll pop this open here. No more questions on Restream, sweet. So as far as will the clip be available later, you can go to, let's see here, open up a new tab, Pixel Logic, ZBrush, Presenters, Live Presenters. Presenters, Pixelogic, ZBrush Live. Scroll down until you see Aiman Akhtar, Past Broadcasts and Schedules. And then this clip is going to be number 43 over here in this section. So yeah, I'll leave that in the Restream chat for you. That's where the link's going to become available if you want to refer to this video later. If you want to follow me on Instagram, Aiman Akhtar 3D, I'll post when I launch that brush, so you guys can download the articulation brush and help me work it out. So that's Instagram.com, Aiman Akhtar 3D. And yeah, just stay in touch. I'm going to do another stream next week on Thursday at 10 a.m. To noon. And then we'll catch up on it then. Thanks again for joining. Hope you guys enjoyed that, and I will catch you next time. Cheers.